Hi, everyone. I'm Nice Loh, Product Manager with Teams Engineering. Welcome to Build 2024 and our session on custom copilots, Teams integrations in government applications. We're talking to two early leaders that have realized AI value, 𝗦𝗲𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂 and Studio 365. Joining me remotely is Christian Burke, Customer Program Manager over in Florida. Hey, Christian.
Hi there, Eunice. I am super excited to have 𝗦𝗲𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂 here today with us. They are a company focusing on aerospace and defense technology that happens to rely on our 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂, our government community cloud high architecture, including Azure Government. Both of these meet strict security requirements in the defense industry, and they're one of the first ever to speak on behalf of those two architectures for us. I'm excited to have with us today 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and back to you, Eunice.
Hi, Inga. Thanks for joining us. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your team.
Hi, Eunice. Hi, Christian. Thank you so much for having me today and allowing me to share really what we've been working on. My name is 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and I'm the Director of Data Analytics and Automation here at 𝗦𝗽𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗀𝗀, and I'm based out of Melbourne, Florida. At 𝗦𝗽𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀, I'm really responsible for the enterprise data environment, including our data strategy, which includes the platforms, the tools associated with that, as well as our enterprise automation team, which really specializes in RPA and really business process automation. And then lastly, really responsible now for bringing the power of AI to our organization.
Yep. Thank you for joining us and for your partnership with Microsoft. If I could, I'll start with an icebreaker. If you had to pick 5 words to describe your solution, what would they be?
First, user-friendly. Second, secure. Helpful, innovative, and productivity booster.
Okay, if you have more than 5 words to work with, could you describe the problem you were trying to solve?
Yeah, so really, we set out to create a virtual AI assistant for our employees to really help with their productivity type of tasks. Early on, we really started awareness campaign and education campaigns when these technologies kind of first became mainstream. So we really started talking to our employees about it and really immediately recognized the value that this can bring to businesses and kind of the new era we're all kind of stepping into, right? So we focused on the educational part first, coaching what you can and cannot do with the solutions available out there today. We knew our employees wanted to use it. We knew they were going to use it. So let's make sure they're using it safely while we kind of prep for the more permanent, secure solution that we can offer to our employees. So in parallel, we really started to kind of scan the industry, really see what is out there, how can we build this in-house that we can kind of keep our data safe, but really still allowing our employees to kind of get that productivity boost that they were wanting.
Yep. What inspired you to try and solve this with Azure Open AI and Teams specifically?
So, I mean, we have a long-standing great partnership with Microsoft. So honestly, we're most familiar with their suite of tools. And at the time, they were also, I mean, Microsoft was the most ready, enterprise ready with these set of tools for us to consume. So we kind of looked at what's available. And once we kind of decided on delivering the solution through Teams to kind of keep that user experience consistent for our end users, they're used to being in Teams all day, every day, talking to their coworkers. So we really thought that was the most natural fit to offer this to them. So we kind of went backwards from that. Like, okay, let's start with the Teams UI. That's how we're going to deliver it. And then what does that mean in the back end? And there we really heavily relied on our partnership with Microsoft on really kind of how to structure that and how to architect that in the back end.
What resonated with your stakeholders?
So I would say 2 things primarily. Security is always number 1 for us. We're an aerospace and defense company. So keeping our data safe is number 1, 2, and 3, right? We get, every time I brief on the solution and talk to our employees about it, that is always kind of the first question. What happens to the data? Where does the data live? Who has access to it? Those type of questions. So that is always the first thing that we discuss with our stakeholders and our employees. Second, the productivity that it can and will bring to their day. There's a lot of like the awareness and the educational piece of this cannot be understated. So that is a huge piece here to kind of talk through what the solution can bring and encourage the experimentation. Employees have to kind of learn how to integrate this into their days, what it will and will not do for them. And that's all part of their journey into these new tools, right? So I would say those are the two things, security as well as a productivity boost.
Could you share some highlights about your development journey? What worked well?
Yeah, I think my developer team, we're really thankful for the example codes and the libraries that were provided on GitHub repo. They were able to really get going super quick. They had never created a bot before, right? Like this was the first bot for all of them. And they were able to get into the GitHub repo, clone down the code, and have something up and running super quick. So really, I think that was the main highlight, is having that and really being able to stand up a prototype within days.
Days is pretty amazing. How did you end up selecting the development choices that you made?
Once we had the delivery mechanism identified, we knew we wanted to deliver it via Teams. We kind of worked backwards from there, and we consulted our Microsoft technical team, the product group, on really the best way to architect that, kind of worked front to back.
How did Azure Open AI and Teams change the problem-solving process or thinking?
So this is a new technology for all of us, and kind of the bleeding edge nature of it. The team had to adjust and really think outside of the box. They had to be really persistent and really be okay with things not working right the first time or the second time, and really being persistent and resilient in the troubleshooting nature of it.
Would you be willing to share with the audience a bit about the architecture?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really all starts with the Azure Open AI GPT-4 model in Azure Government. And we connect that deployment model to an app service. The app service itself hosts all of the code configuration, including the Teams AI library, the bot framework, SDK, which really allows that seamless experience for our developers. And from there, our bot registration handles all the communication between the app service and the Teams UI.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Sarah Beeler, and I'm excited to guide you through this on-demand video training. Our focus today will be on the robust architecture that powers our solutions and how you can leverage Microsoft-published GitHub repositories as resources. First, let's talk about architecture. Our systems are built to be scalable, secure, and resilient. Starting with our architectural diagram, providing you with a deep dive into the architectural principles that are at our core of this technology. This solution starts with utilizing Teams as that user interface. Our bot registration then receives the requests from our AI assistant within Teams and sends the request to our app service. Our app service hosts the majority of the configuration for this solution, which comprises of additional function calls, including the Teams AI library and bot framework SDK, to allow for a seamless connection experience. Lastly, our app service flows the requests to our Azure Open AI API instance and then sends the response back to the end user in Teams. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you some GitHub repositories. So these GitHub repositories include code samples, documentation, and tools that will help you implement this solution. Each resource has been carefully curated to support your OpenAI implementation into a Teams user interface. The first GitHub repository we are displaying on the screen is the Microsoft Teams samples. This was where we were able to clone down sample code to get us started. The next GitHub repository is going to be the Microsoft Teams AI GitHub repository. This repository will allow for the Teams AI library SDK to implement some additional configuration within your code base to allow for that seamless connection. And then on top of that, you will also want to reference the bot framework SDK, which you can clone down from this repository here. All of these libraries are directly responsible for the solution you will be seeing in just a second. So we highly recommend utilizing these resources. And lastly, we wanted to showcase a Microsoft Learning knowledge base article for configuring the bot framework bot for the US government cloud. So within this document, they provide a good amount of callouts for the configuration changes you will need to make in regards to ensuring that it is configurable for the government cloud environment. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to you, Hunter.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm just going to go through briefly and give an overview of our implementation of the chatbot and how we got it working. As you called out, we have a lot of security in mind, and we're a government contractor, so we had to make those changes to the configuration in order to work in the GCC high environment. And of course, with security being key to mind, all of our secrets and everything are stored in our key vault. So you'll see some references here to key vault secrets and configuration secrets. And so that's so we can have all of those API keys, bot secrets, and everything necessary to configure the Azure bot to work and have that stored in our key vault. We also have references, as you mentioned, to the Teams AI and the bot builder libraries, and these provide a lot of functionality out of the box that helped us get up and running pretty quickly with minimal code on our part. One other thing that was on the architecture diagram were the blob storage, and pretty much for us, we're making use of that for our transcript logging. That really helped us when we were developing to understand what was going on with the bot and kind of see the ins and outs. Right now, we also use that for metrics for some of our higher ups. So that's another nice feature. And these were all the libraries that we kind of pulled into our bot in order to make it function. Now, the core of the bot is really starting in the program.cs. And here's where all the setup really occurs. And if you look here, as I said, Key Vault is extremely important. That's where all of our secrets are, and that gets set up in here. It goes ahead and pulls this in so that we can make all the references to our secrets just as if they were in our app settings JSON file. Then we go ahead and pull in our OpenAI key because we're going to need that in order to interface with the OpenAI API and actually interface with that and get our responses back from our OpenAI instance. And then go ahead and set up our blob storage, again, mentioned for the transcript logging. And down here, we go ahead and pull in the Teams AI and the bot builder APIs. Again, this made our implementation really easy because a lot of this code came from some of those samples that you called out in the GitHub repositories. We were able to copy almost line for line from those examples and pull them into our bot implementation, and it really took care of most of the setup for us. That made things really easy. Down here, we've got our blob connection string, so we can do our transcript logging and more of the setup for the OpenAI endpoints. And lastly, this is where all of the OpenAI information kind of gets pulled together and the bot really gets instantiated. The prompt manager is pulling in the semantic kernel framework, which is kind of built into the Teams AI library, and that pulls in these prompts folder. These are semantic skills, and these are telling OpenAI how to operate. Gives them, it's using the completion API, tells it to use GPT-4, and this just kind of goes and sets up the API calls. They're going to be happening behind the scenes on our behalf. And then the SK prompt kind of just gives instructions to OpenAI on how to operate. Our MVP was a very simple instruction, and just tells it to operate as an assistant and to help our employees. And then once all of that has been imported and all of the components are put together, then it builds the application and goes ahead and loads up these activity handlers. We have a couple of extra activity handlers that we added on. For example, we have a method that creates a welcome message to the user whenever they first import the bot, gives them some basic instructions on how the bot operates, including a special command that we built to reset the context of the bot in case the user session has used up all of the available tokens. They can reset the bot and get back to a fresh start. And so those are some additional items that we built in, and we call them out in our welcome message. And then lastly, we just finish wiring up the rest of the controllers, and then our bot was ready to roll. And also, one important note is in our app settings, we had to add some of the items that Sarah had mentioned that were necessary for our government cloud configuration in order to make sure that our bot worked, because we were in the GCC high environment. It goes back to that article that she mentioned that we had to make some of these settings in our bot in order for it to work in our environment. But that was extremely helpful, and we're happy our Microsoft partners pointed us to that direction, because it would have been up a creek without it. One other thing that we did was we added some special error handling conditions. Things like, again, running out of tokens. We actually went ahead and implemented some adaptive cards to try and make it easier for the end user. So if they run out of tokens, we have a nice little card that'll pop up and give them a button they click on to reset their session. And then we were able to do most of what we needed with just those bits, but we were able to also add in some additional functionality using Logger middleware, and it helped us to adjust some of the responses that were coming back from the bot if they were necessary to do so. And last, we have the manifest JSON file. So this is what was required in order to load our bot into our Teams environment. And this is what made it real easy for our users to use. So once we loaded this into our Teams, the users were able to interact with the bot just simply by chatting. So this is an example of one of the Teams manifests. You just kind of have to swap out the IDs for your individual IDs that were created in your Azure environment. We provided this to our Teams admins, and they were able to load that bot for us. And once we had that, then we were able to chat with our bot right in our Teams client, just as if it was an end user. So wanted to ask it to help me out with a little script. It's able to write a script for me real quick, just to check and see if a website's operational. And I can copy paste this into PowerShell, and there we go. Also, if I had an error message that I was getting back from one of my APIs, for example, like I was working with OpenAI, and I didn't know what that error message was, I could ask it for some assistance. And that saves me from having to go out and Google it myself. Well, I hope this was a useful demonstration and showing what can be done in setting up an OpenAI chatbot. It's been real handy for our users, and I hope the demonstration was useful for you, and I wish you the best in your endeavors to create your own chatbots.
As an early adopter of AI, how were you able to accelerate your build or MVP process?
The GitHub repos really accelerated kind of that early prototype that we created, being able to clone that down, and then we had something to start with. Like I mentioned, our team had never created a bot before, so it was a first for everybody. So having that kind of starting point really helped accelerate that.
Any advice for people looking to follow in your footsteps?
Honestly, just start somewhere. This is a new technology for all of us. you're not going to start with the 100% like the correct use case or the best use case for your organization. Just start somewhere. There's going to be trial and errors along the way. You're going to have to adapt and pivot, most likely. You're not going to get it right the first time, but really start somewhere. Allow your technical team to train on the technology, become familiar with it, while your company and organization is also catching up, right? Like give them something to play with, something to experiment with, because they also need to learn and catch up.
Do you have a sense for the return on investment?
Yeah, so we did interview some of our pilot users that were kind of the first into the solution. We have had a group of 1,000 people using it for a couple of months before we released it out to the enterprise. And once we kind of interviewed them to understand how they were using it, the average answer was about 2 to 5 hours a week for each employee, which is pretty significant.
Would you be willing to share what's next for this solution? What's coming in the next version? Where do you think you'll be next year?
Yeah, so the solution we have now is not connected to any internal data. So that is coming next. We're going to connect to data like our policy library, our intranet, custom app solutions, hopefully some of our engineering tools as well. So I would say that's number one. We really want to also connect into the other Office and Microsoft suite of tools. And then lastly, really working our way down the long list of use cases that our employees have provided to us. They're all so super excited for the technology, and they're really seeing, giving us ideas and really seeing like how this can make an impact to their job. And I really think they're the best ones to really tell us how this is going to work the best for them.
It's absolutely amazing and exciting to have you join us, 𝗦𝗲, and share your insights and experience with us. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Up next, I have Jorge, who's been working with Studio 365 in the Court of Justice of Paraná. Jorge, would you like to say a little bit about them?
Sure. Thanks, Eunice. So the Court of Justice of Paraná is the judiciary body of the state of Paraná in Brazil. Their primary objective includes promoting active transparency in the public management, facilitating access to information for citizens, and serving as an instrument for accountability and to promote social control. These objectives reflect Tribunal de Justiça do Paraná commitments to openness, service to the public, and the pursuit of justice within the state. Innovation is among Tribunal de Justiça do Paraná values and a key resource to produce positive change by successfully exploring new ideas and seeking to revolutionize scenarios, exactly as the jurisprudence solutions they've been developing in conjunction with the Studio 365. Rafael, who has been part of TJ Paraná since 2007, has been overseeing the proof of concept implementation and tests of the jurisprudence solution and represents the court in this interview. Studio 365 is a leading Brazilian ISV, 3 times in a row Latam Partner of the Year. 𝗬𝗲𝗀, who is Studio 365 CEO and founder, has been lately working, dedicating to create solutions based in generative AI for the judiciary system and focus on using AI to leverage existing jurisprudence, optimizing time to decision by simplifying the research process and reducing the costs involved in litigations and enhancing the decision-making, ensuring that first-degree sentence adhere to current implementations from higher courts. Up to you, Eunice.
Thanks, Jorge. ¿Cómo va, Rafael, 𝗬𝗲𝗀? Thank you so much for joining us. Rafael, please, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hello, Eunice. Hello, everyone. So I'm a computer scientist with a master's degree in applied computation, and I've been a public servant of Paraná Justice Court since 2007. And currently, I'm the Secretary of Information Technology.
And 𝗬𝗲𝗀, can you introduce yourself for the audience?
Hi, Eunice. Hello, everyone. I'm CEO of Studio 365. We are a Brazilian startup based in São Paulo, and we build products highly integrated to Microsoft Teams and also powered by Microsoft Azure.
Your solution, Jurisprudencia GPT, I translated it. It translates to the science of the law. What does it help people do?
𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 is a natural language processing chatbot driven by generative AI that allows judges and public servants to have a human-like conversations enriched by judicial knowledge from millions of documents published by Brazilian courts. We like to see it as an expert assistant who has read up to 10 million pages so far and is ready to talk about court decisions and knowledge of law.
Would you show us how it works?
Yeah, sure.
I'm on Microsoft Teams. Jurisprudence GPT is a Teams app and is available on the left-hand sidebar. It is a conversational chatbot for judicial decisions and laws. Users can start by asking a question or choosing one of suggested questions. The answer and the entire conversation from now on are built using generative AI to create a human-like conversational experience. A pre-trained knowledge model ensures conversational accuracy and protects users from AI hallucination. Generative AI will always display knowledge citations so users can validate the answers. Our explainability model allows users to access original court decision documents at any time. Users can use follow-up questions, provide a feedback for the answer, and also adjust the response length. We also built a focus feature, which allows users to broaden or narrow the judicial knowledge of the conversation. So a judge can know how a legal matter is being decided through the Brazilian judicial system, which operates at federal and state levels, has several jurisdictions and appeal instances.
How did Azure Open AI and Teams change the way you were going to solve this problem?
So using Azure Open AI and Azure AI search services, we are able to quickly build a complex RAG and vector search architecture as a foundation for our custom generative AI application. Jurisprudência GPT is also a custom app to make user adoption easier by enabling a new application without changing the work experience. And we're using Microsoft Teams as a channel to deploy enterprise applications to enhance security and also governance.
When you saw the solution, Rafael, what was your reaction?
We have this vast body of knowledge, our jurisprudence database, which is a collection of court rulings. So we have almost 5 million decisions in this database. However, this knowledge was locked behind a poor search mechanism. We couldn't find the information we needed. Therefore, we had been looking for a solution to make this information more readily available to our users. It's a demand we have for many years. This decision helps us have uniform and faster rulings. That's why it's important to have it available to our users. Needless to say, we're very happy with the possibility of going through this database in a fast and user-friendly manner.
Rafael, what appealed to you about Jurisprudencia?
When we first saw how it worked and we showed it to our users, we saw how intuitive and easy to search for our decisions, easy to reach this knowledge, to reach into this vast database of knowledge.
Rafael, how do you expect this will improve your processes, or have you already seen improvement? How's the feedback been like from your users?
We have already had very positive feedback. We are still testing the solution with a few users, but their feedback already shows how disruptive this technology is.
What are your expectations in terms of productivity gains or other benefits from this solution? Fewer decisions being reversed or more coherent decisions among users from the same region?
Yeah, we are looking for more coherent decisions, uniform decisions for sure. Faster decisions as well, because it's now much easier for us to locate the information needed for taking those decisions.
Elio, as someone who's been developing in the Microsoft ecosystem for some time, what was the learning curve like for your team?
even for a highly skilled team, there were some concerns about how difficult it would be to learn so many new technologies, concepts, and services in order to build our generative AI application. But honestly, this was the most complex, but also the fastest learning experience that I have had in my entire career. We are able to spend more time thinking about how these new technologies could be used to benefit the current users instead of learning new development tools or platforms from scratch. It was amazing.
It sounds amazing. What technologies did you use? Can you share a bit about the architecture?
The generative AI architecture uses the GPT 3.5 Turbo, GPT 4.0, and embedding models from Azure Open AI. And we also use Azure AI Search Services. The knowledge and learning architecture uses Azure Document AI Services and huge Azure Compute Services clusters to run Python and also some .NET Core applications for custom enrichment and prompt engineering. And we also use Azure AI Content Safety and Azure AI Language Services to guarantee the foundations of responsible AI practice, emphasizes ethics and explainability.
What dev tools did you find useful?
We use the same tools and development process that we already have, and it's all based on Visual Studio Enterprise and Azure DevOps services. We added some specific open source tools for training and testing knowledge models.
You've also added an integration for Copilot for Microsoft 365. Can you show us what that looks like?
Yeah, sure.
So let's take a look at Copilot. In the plugin file, you can see the 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 plugin is enabled. We're going to go ahead and enter a prompt and ask what measures are provided to manage the COVID-19 pandemic in Brazil. Copilot goes ahead and attempts to generate an answer, which we'll see here in a minute. If the user needs to find out the source of the reference, they can do so by hovering over the citations. And additionally, by hovering over the citations in the text, they can bring up the original card in response from 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, including the option to hand off or visit the source sites. There are also suggested prompts provided in the bottom.
So this next question is for both of you. Maybe we'll start with Rafael. But what's next for 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀?
We are looking for ways to bring more customizations and filters so that our users are able to limit what kind of information should be part of the search. On the other hand, we are also looking to bring in more information to the solution, other databases, the decisions from the Supreme Court, for instance. We are also looking for a way to make the search available to the public.
Thank you. And Elio, what enhancements do you plan in the future?
We will always have the opportunity to improve the generative AI for users, generating better answers, making more reliable conversations, or expanding knowledge. And we need to do this by ensuring the responsible AI practice. So I hope our AI model was able to read 100 million pages by the end of this year. And we should also explore integration with Copilot in so many ways.
For other people who are thinking of getting started with Copilot development, do you have any words of advice?
Yeah, sure. You guys did a great job reusing the Teams extensibility model to build Copilot extensibility, and I love it. So for those who already have experience with Teams extensibility, I would recommend to start by plugins for Copilot. But there are several ways to build integrations with Copilot, and it's important to evaluate them all and choose the best path for your application or content.
Rafael, Elio, it's been a joy to have you here with us, and I'm super excited to see what comes next. And to everyone else, thanks for watching our on-demand session. For deep dives on how to bring your own AI solutions to Teams, be sure to check out the sessions on the screen. Also, A shout out to this other session on the screen that talks about the business value that AI brings to industry solutions if you happen to be here this week. Bye!